everybody, and welcome back to my kitchen. It's Friday, July 17th, and I'm very excited because I was just gifted a beautiful bag, humongous bag of about 4 different types of basil. The smell in here right now is crazy. Fresh basil is one of my absolute favorite herbs. I like it fresh, in between slices of tomato and mozzarella cheese with some olive oil and some cracked black pepper on top to make a caprese salad. That's an awesome way to eat it. But I also really like a pesto pasta. And so that's what we're going to do today. Is we're going to turn some of this, not all of it, but the majority of it, we're going to turn into a fresh pesto sauce. And we'll eat some today, and I'm going to show you also how to freeze it, because this is going to make a ton of pesto. This is going to make more than I would be eating or serving to anybody in one sitting. So I'm going to show you how the best way, I think, to freeze it. Now, the thing with pesto is like any other kind of iconic kitchen dish, like apple pie or cabbage rolls or prime rib or whatever it might be, meatloaf, doesn't matter. Everybody's got their own way of making it and their own little special twists. I have one of my own. So make it to your taste. You just use this recipe as maybe a guideline, and we'll talk about some of the variations that people commonly do as we work our way through the recipe here. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is your basil. So you can see this is beautiful leafy stuff. It's got some flowers on it, and that's great because basil that is just about to flower or is in the process of flowering is at its most peppery flavor-wise. So that's awesome. Now we're not going to eat the flowers in the pesto. We are going to pick off the leaves, but when you're buying basil, you want to look for basil that has a really nice, beautiful green color, and it smells good. It doesn't look black around the edges. That's kind of a key that it's maybe been sitting in the grocery case at the store too long. This is beautiful stuff. There's some other varieties in here too. Let me see. Here's some purple, beautiful purple stuff. It's all going to go in here as well. It smells delicious. And the first thing we're going to do, and this is actually the most time-consuming part of making basil, is just picking all the fresh leaves off the plant and plopping them in a bowl. And then we are going to clean them and dry them and make sure that they're ready to go for our pesto. So we don't want any of those stems in there. We don't want any, little flower blossoms in there. Just the nice leaves. And as you can see, I have a whole bunch of those that I have to do. So I will be back when I have picked through all those leaves, and we'll talk about some of the other ingredients you need and the next steps and the various ways that you can make this, because there are many different ways to make it as well. Okay? Okay, so we've got our basil separated from the stems. I like to wash mine in my salad spinner. If you have one of these, it's a great tool for this particularly, because by the spinning action, it gets rid of any excess water, which is what you want. You can find these pretty cheaply at thrift stores. You'll see them popping up all the time. And I'm always amazed when I do see one on the shelf in a thrift store, because I think, why are you not using this? This is a great tool. I use mine a lot, even when I come home from doing groceries, because I like to prep my lettuce and put it in a container in my fridge so that I can just grab a handful and make a salad for lunch. And when you wash it and you get that much water off, that salad lasts a whole lot longer than if you just cut it off the head of lettuce when you're ready to use it. So just food for thought if you can get your hands on a salad spinner. If you don't have a salad spinner, wash it in a colander, drain it, put it in a tea towel, and give it a nice pat dry to make sure that it's not excessively wet, okay? Other ingredients or tools that we're going to need. So for your cheese, you're going to need to grate your cheese fairly finely. So I have my little, I use it mostly for zesting lemons, but it also works great for Parmesan cheese. But any grater really will work. Now, if you were making a tiny little quantity of pesto just for yourself for supper, or you had a handful of basil and you wanted to make it into pesto, try making it in a mortar and pestle if you have one available. Reason being is that the food processor, while great, and it's what we're going to use today, it chops your ingredients, okay? And that's fine, but it produces a more coarse pesto, where if you put your stuff in a pestle and you grind it, you actually work it into much more of a paste, and those oils from your garlic and all your other ingredients really have a chance to release. So it's a very different, it's a creamier finished product when it comes out of a pestle, and it's a little bit more intense, I think, the flavor. But today, when you're working with such a huge quantity of basil, we are going to cave in and we're going to use the food processor. What else do you need? Well, garlic, and this is a personal preference. For this kind of pasta or pesto, this volume of basil, I've got about 6 big cloves of garlic here on my board, but use more or less depending on what you like. I like it really garlicky. Parmesan cheese, we already talked about that. So I've got about a cup grated in here, and I've got some extra here if I need a little bit more. Now, traditional pesto calls for pine nuts. I hate pine nuts, I really do. They're overpriced. I don't like the taste of them toasted or raw. And I just find that, you know, you buy some and if you don't use them all, they go rancid very, very quickly. So in a pinch, the last time I made pesto, I actually used sunflower seeds. These are unsalted, just plain sunflower seeds. And what I like about these is, first of all, I like sunflower seeds on salads or in other dishes, you know, just to grab a handful for a snack. Keep them in the fridge and they last a lot longer than your pine nuts. Some people like walnuts. I'm not so much a fan, but I think you could probably just about substitute any nut that you are really, that you enjoy. I mean, I think even unsalted peanuts in pesto would probably be pretty good. You're also going to need olive oil. For this much, probably at least half to 2/3 of a cup of olive oil. And something that I will put in pesto that I'm going to eat that night, not that I'm going to freeze, is a little bit of lemon zest. This again, not a traditional ingredient, but it just seems to go so nicely with the freshness of the basil, and it really kind of brightens it up. So let's bring the camera a little closer here, and you can sort of watch this all come together. Okay, so first things first. Take out our disc, we don't need that. So we've got our blade in the bottom of our food processor here, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to chop up our garlic, okay? And again, I like it garlicky, so I'm using like 6 big fat cloves. Oops, something's not lined up here. There we go. Okay, so that's good. So you want it pretty fine to start with. Let's see if I can show you here. It's very fine, okay? Now again, if you were doing it with a mortar and pestle, it would be like a paste. So just kind of bear that in mind, I guess. Now, we will stuff in some of our basil. I'm gonna have to do this in 2 batches, I think, because now I'm gonna try it without adding any olive oil and see if I can get it to reduce down just with its own moisture, but I may have to add a drizzle of olive oil to get things moving in here. It's starting to. There we go. It's looking good. It's smelling really good. All right. Last of our basil leaves. And again, we've got all different kinds of basil in here. We've got the purple basil. Doesn't really matter. Drizzle of olive oil in there just to get things moving. There we go. again, we want it pretty fine. Okay. It smells so good. So you can have a look. See? Right. Now, at this point, we're going to add in our cheese. So about a cup. You can add more to taste. And I'm going to add the equivalent of probably half a cup of sunflower seeds-ish. Again, personal preference, you add what you like. And now a really good glug of olive oil. And then we are going to puree this until it's as fine as we can get it. Oh, looking good, smelling amazing. And give the sides a bit of a scrape. It's still a little bit too dry, I guess, not pasty. I want it pasty. So we're going to put in some more olive oil. Good. Let me show you. So we see. Okay, so let's give it the old taste test. It's good. I think it needs some more cheese and a little bit of salt, actually. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to give it a whirl. And then once we get to the right consistency and the right taste, for me anyways, I'm going to come back and I will show you how to freeze it. Okay, so we're back, and I did add a pinch of salt and some extra cheese to the pesto just to get it to my taste preference. Gave it another good puree, and it's fantastic. So we are ready now to freeze it. Now, most people will tell you to just stick it in an ice cube tray, and that's fine. You can do that. It works for sure. But those big bricks of pesto don't always thaw very quickly. So if you just want like a little tiny dollop for something, you have to kind of wait for that whole ice cube to thaw to the point where you can slice off what you need, which is kind of a pain. So I'm going to show you a different way to freeze it. And you may like this way, you may not, but we'll see. What I did do first though is I took about 4 tablespoons of the pesto that we made, and I'm going to set that aside because I'm going to use that tonight for supper over some fresh tomatoes, and to that I'm going to add lemon zest. I don't know how the lemon zest would do in the stuff we're going to put in the freezer, and I would hate for it to come out tasting bitter. So that's why I'm only doing it with the stuff that I'm going to have for supper tonight. So that's set aside. I have taken the rest of my pesto and I have scraped it out of our container here onto a wax paper lined cookie sheet. Let me just move some stuff here so you can see what I'm doing. So here's our cookie sheet, and as you can see, I'm just kind of spreading it out quite thin. It's probably like maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe. Okay. And what I am then going to do is I'm going to take some more wax paper, and I'm just going to press it onto the top of our cookie sheet here. There we go. Press it down. Now this is going to not only smooth the top so it becomes a nice smooth sheet, It's also going to prevent that pesto from oxidizing, because now we are going to put this whole thing in the freezer. So we're going to give this a good couple hours to solidify in the freezer. You want it frozen enough that you can cut it with a knife, and you can cut it into whatever size sheets you want. But the point is that they are much thinner, delicious, they are in sheets. So you just, once it's fully frozen, you cut it up into whatever size sheets you want, you pop it in a Ziploc bag, and you put that whole thing back in the freezer, and then you just grab a sheet for whatever size project you're working on. So that is how I freeze my pesto. I just find it's a little more effective than the ice cube tray method. The other thing is, I find sometimes because of the oil, the cubes don't always want to release quite that well from the ice cube tray. So this is a little bit different way of doing it. And I'll be back to show you when it's fully frozen what it looks like, and we'll cut it up and we'll throw it in the freezer. Be back. Good morning, guys. Welcome back to my kitchen. So we are just finishing up with our pesto that we have made. So here is how it looks. It's been on the cookie sheet. We put it in and it's had the night in the freezer. So now I'm going to show you what we're going to do with it. So we're going to peel away our waxed paper. Go. One. And number two. Whoops, one little piece here. There. Okay, so we've got our wax paper off the top. Now we're going to take it, I'm going to put it onto a cutting board rather, and I'm going to cut it up so that we can freeze it. Okay. So we're going to take our frozen sheet of pesto, put it upside down on our cutting board, and we're just going to, again, ease the, there we go, take that off. So here's what we've got, sheet of pesto, and then from here, you can really cut it into whatever size pieces you like. I'm going to use, I'm going to do a variety of different sizes. So I'm going to do like about some 1.5 inch squares, I think, to start. It cuts great, which is very, very handy. And then, of course, you can just pop those into a freezer bag. And the next time you need just a little bit of pesto, you can have a little bit, you can have a lot. The beautiful thing about doing it this way is that these little thin sheets of pesto take so much less time to thaw when you're ready to use them. So I'm going to continue on with this, guys. Thanks for joining me in my kitchen once again, and stay tuned. We'll see you in another video. Bye.